Are humans truly rational creatures, guided by reason and logic, or are we merely passengers in a vehicle driven by desire, fear, and impulse? David Hume, the Scottish philosopher, made a claim that shakes the very foundation of our self-image. Reason is, and ought only to be, the slave of the passions. At first, it sounds almost absurd. We like to imagine ourselves as architects of our lives, carefully weighing choices, deliberating consequences, and acting in accordance with reason. Yet, a closer look at history, psychology, and even our everyday decisions reveals a far darker, more chaotic truth. Reason often follows, not leads. Consider a ruler making a momentous decision. Empires rise not because kings reasoned their way to conquest, but because they were driven by ambition, fear, or revenge. The fall of Rome was not a simple failure of strategy. It was the cumulative consequence of human passions unchecked by reason. In every political upheaval, from revolutions to civil wars, the actors often believe themselves to be rational, yet their actions are propelled by pride, resentment, and desire for dominance. Even today, individuals justify choices that contradict their best interests. Studies in psychology show our brains prioritize emotional responses first. Fear, love, desire. These ignite action almost instantaneously. Only later does reason appear, crafting arguments to justify what the heart has already decided. This post-rationalization gives the illusion that we acted logically, while in truth, reason is merely trailing the passions, providing a story we can tell ourselves to feel in control. Think of daily life. A person chooses a career, a partner, or even a meal, believing logic governs their choice. Yet, countless studies reveal that subconscious biases, emotional triggers, and instinctive impulses heavily influence these decisions. The so-called rational mind is constantly negotiating with an invisible master, our own emotional architecture. Experiments in behavioral economics, cognitive psychology, and neuroscience consistently demonstrate this. The brain is designed to react first, think later. Desire sparks action, reason rationalizes it. History amplifies this reality on a grand scale. The stock market crashes, revolutions, and mass movements rarely begin with careful reasoning. They surge from collective fear, greed, and envy. Leaders convince populations through emotional storytelling rather than logical argument. Propaganda, charismatic speeches, and symbolic gestures ignite passions, while reason quietly justifies the resulting chaos. Even the most educated, thoughtful societies have repeatedly fallen prey to mass hysteria. What appears as reasoned consensus is, more often, a post hoc construction to mask the raw influence of collective emotion. We like to believe in free will, in the triumph of intellect over instinct. But Hume challenges this comforting illusion. He reminds us that our choices are seldom born in the cool chambers of rational thought. Instead, they arise in the furnace of desire, in the turbulence of fear and hope. Reason is no tyrant, no commanding force. It is a tool wielded by the passions, an obedient servant that gives coherence to the chaos of human emotion. Understanding this is not despair, it is revelation. Once we see the machinery of our own minds, we begin to recognize patterns in history, in politics, in human behavior. We can see why civilizations rise and fall, why revolutions ignite and fizzle, why ordinary humans repeat the same mistakes despite their intelligence. This tension between reason and passion is not merely academic. It shapes every aspect of our lives, the choices we make, the systems we create, and the societies we inhabit. Recognizing that reason is subordinate to desire forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How often do we act from careful judgment, and how often from impulses we barely understand? How do our emotions manipulate our beliefs, our decisions, our sense of morality? And, perhaps most profoundly, if reason is a servant, whose passions are we truly serving, our own, or those crafted by society, culture, and power? In this exploration, we will journey from the intimate confines of the human mind to the grand stages of history and society. We will uncover how passion governs action, how reason is persuaded and constrained, and how this dynamic shapes not only individual lives, but entire civilizations. By the end, we must confront the unsettling reality that our cherished rationality may be less a guide and more a witness, a companion trailing behind the relentless, invisible force of our own passions. Understanding this is the first step toward clarity. The stage is set. The tension between reason and passion is no mere philosophical abstraction. It is the engine of human history, the hidden hand behind daily decisions, and the secret architect of civilizations. To navigate the modern world, to decode the influence of media, politics, and social pressures, we must first confront the truth of our own minds. That reason, elegant and precise though it may be, is often nothing more than the obedient servant of desire. Human behavior is rarely as logical as we like to believe. Desire, fear, envy, and pride are not mere background emotions. They are the architects of our decisions. Every choice we make, from the seemingly trivial to the life-defining, is filtered through these emotional lenses. Our minds are wired to react first, rationalize later. Cognitive science reveals that the limbic system, the emotional core of our brains, fires impulses long before the prefrontal cortex can weigh consequences. Fear triggers flight before thought. Desire sparks pursuit before deliberation. Reason does not initiate action. It provides justification, a carefully constructed narrative to explain what has already occurred. History offers countless illustrations. The financial panic of 1929 was not a collapse of arithmetic, but a tidal wave of collective emotion. Greed and fear spread like wildfire through the market, prompting irrational decisions that no spreadsheet or economic theory could prevent. Entire nations reacted to fear before logic had a chance to intervene. Similarly, propaganda-driven mass movements show the seductive power of emotion over reason. A single speech can ignite passion, rally millions, and shape the course of history, not through rational argument, but through storytelling, imagery, and the manipulation of collective sentiment. Cults, revolutions, and even ordinary mobs demonstrate the same pattern. Reason is present, but only to justify, never to command. Psychology uncovers subtler mechanisms. Cognitive biases, confirmation bias, loss aversion, and the availability heuristic skew perception, ensuring that emotion dictates which facts are noticed, remembered, or ignored. Humans are natural storytellers. We prioritize narratives that resonate emotionally over those that align with objective reality. A tale of injustice, betrayal, or triumph triggers dopamine and adrenaline, hardwiring attention toward passion-fueled thinking. Rational analysis arrives later, often corrupted by the emotional imprint already etched in our minds. Even pride and envy, quieter but persistent, manipulate decisions in profound ways. Ambition drives nations to war. Jealousy shapes interpersonal relationships. The need for recognition compels conformity or rebellion. These forces are universal, transcending culture, geography, and time. Ancient philosophers, from Plato to Hume, recognized this dynamic. Reason is rarely the author of action. It is the editor, revising and refining decisions born in the furnace of emotion. Modern neuroscience confirms what Hume intuited centuries ago. Emotion is decision-making at its root, reason a commentary, a rationalization mechanism. The implications are staggering. Every ethical judgment, political choice, and social behavior is filtered through the prism of passion. Understanding this allows us to see why humans so often repeat the same mistakes, why societies embrace ideologies that contradict their self-interest, and why even the most intelligent minds are vulnerable to manipulation. This interplay of emotion and reason also illuminates the modern world. Social media algorithms exploit our craving for novelty, outrage, and validation, amplifying emotions while providing rational explanations to justify actions. Advertising, political messaging, and news cycles all leverage this architecture. We are drawn not by the logic of a claim, but by the emotional resonance it evokes. Reason becomes a servant, justifying what the heart, or the collective heart, already desires. Recognizing this is both unsettling and empowering. Unsettling because it shatters the comforting myth of rational autonomy. Empowering because understanding the mechanics of passion gives us the possibility of conscious awareness. By observing the forces that drive us, by acknowledging the emotions that shape our reasoning, we can begin to act with intention rather than blind impulse. Hume's insight is not a condemnation, it is a guidepost. Reason need not be a tyrant, but neither should it be ignored. It becomes most effective when aligned consciously with the passions that drive us, steering rather than blindly following. History, psychology, and neuroscience converge to a single truth. Humans are creatures of feeling first and thought second. From the rise of empires to the choices we make at dinner tables, passions guide us. Reason is rarely the spark. It is the witness, the narrator, the justifier. By embracing this understanding, we begin to decode not only our own behavior, but the forces that shape societies, economies, and the world at large. Every decision, every movement, every revolution carries the imprint of passion, subtly disguised as reason. To navigate life wisely, to discern manipulation from true insight, we must learn to read this imprint, to see the invisible hand of emotion shaping the world before reason claims credit. The anatomy of passion is the anatomy of action. To understand one is to understand the other. Reason follows, never leads. Desire ignites. Fear propels. Pride guides. And in their wake, reason crafts its stories. Recognizing this dynamic is the first step in reclaiming the autonomy we imagine we possess. The machinery of the mind is unveiled, and with it comes the profound realization. To know ourselves, we must see that the servant often holds the key to the kingdom. In the quiet of our daily routines, a hidden force guides choices, opinions, and emotions. It is subtle, often invisible, yet profoundly powerful. The architecture of influence constructed by institutions, media, and culture. Every headline we read, every advertisement we encounter, every post we scroll past is meticulously designed to engage the passions first and reason second. The modern world has perfected the art of orchestrating human desire, fear, and envy, turning them into levers of behavior that serve agendas far beyond our immediate awareness. Advertising, the most familiar form of manipulation, does not sell products, it sells emotion. A simple commercial is a symphony of triggers, colors, music, imagery, and narrative all calibrated to evoke longing or fear. The rational mind may believe it is evaluating value or utility, yet it is the emotional brain, the limbic system, that decides. Similarly, political messaging thrives on emotional resonance. Fear is a more potent motivator than logic. Outrage spreads faster than reasoning. Leaders craft narratives designed to elicit visceral responses, often sidestepping facts entirely. Entire societies can be mobilized not by evidence, but by engineered emotional contagion. Social media has transformed this mechanism into a machine of unprecedented efficiency. Algorithms track engagement, privileging content that triggers strong emotions. Posts designed to enrage, amuse, or shock are amplified, creating echo chambers where reasoned argument is drowned in the roar of passion. Viral misinformation thrives because it speaks to what people feel rather than what they know. The more emotionally charged the story, the faster it spreads. Rational critique arrives too late to influence the initial wave of action. Our reason is hijacked, serving passions that are externally engineered, not inherently our own. History shows that this is not entirely new. Totalitarian regimes of the 20th century, from fascist Italy to Stalinist Russia, mastered the manipulation of collective emotion. Propaganda campaigns were carefully constructed to provoke fear, pride, or hatred, with rational justifications added only after the passions were engaged. Corporations, colonial powers, and modern governments alike have relied on the same principle. Influence the passions, and reason will dutifully follow. There is a continuity, a lineage of manipulation stretching from the pamphlets of revolutionary Europe to the personalized feeds of today. Consumer culture, too, thrives on engineered desire. Scarcity, exclusivity, and social proof create emotional urgency. Marketing psychology exploits envy, fear of loss, and the desire for social status. People purchase not because products meet rational needs, but because they answer emotional imperatives carefully cultivated by unseen strategists. Our choices appear autonomous, yet the invisible hand of engineered passion subtly steers them toward predefined outcomes. The philosophical dimension of this phenomenon is equally unsettling. Hume's observation, that reason is the slave of the passions, resonates powerfully in this context. We like to imagine that we act freely, that our opinions, beliefs, and decisions are autonomous. Yet, society has built entire systems designed to exploit exactly what Hume described: our emotional primacy. Reason is present, but it is reactive. It justifies, rationalizes, and explains decisions already dictated by external manipulation. Awareness of this dynamic is essential. It allows us to question the narratives presented as truth, to pause before our passions are hijacked, and to consider whether we are acting for ourselves or for forces we barely perceive. Political polarization is a striking example. News outlets and social platforms amplify outrage, framing debates in emotionally charged terms. People are drawn into conflicts not because of rational argument, but because narratives align with identity, pride, or fear. Reason becomes a tool for defending pre-existing passions, rarely for exploring truth. Similarly, consumer trends, viral challenges, and cultural phenomena operate on the same principles. Emotional engagement drives participation. Rational analysis follows to create coherence after the fact. The psychological implications are profound. The human mind is highly susceptible to narrative, especially when that narrative resonates with pre-existing emotions or desires. Our need for belonging, recognition, and certainty makes us responsive to engineered cues. Social influence, when combined with technology and media, becomes a form of psychological architecture. Individuals are not just influenced, they are shaped. The passions that drive decisions may feel private, yet they are often the product of carefully designed external forces. Recognizing these mechanisms is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a tool of empowerment. By understanding how media, advertising, and culture manipulate our passions, we gain the ability to pause, reflect, and reclaim agency. Awareness allows reason to reclaim some of its authority, not as a tyrant over emotion, but as a conscious partner. The modern world is full of invisible puppeteers, yet knowing their methods allows us to discern manipulation from genuine desire, to differentiate externally engineered passion from authentic feeling. Every choice, every opinion, every emotional surge carries the imprint of these forces. From the latest viral video to a national election, from consumer desire to ideological conviction, reason serves passions that are often externally guided. Recognizing the architecture of influence, seeing the invisible strings, allows us to navigate life with clarity. It is not a denial of emotion, it is a confrontation with reality. Understanding the mechanisms behind social influence, media manipulation, and cultural pressure is the key to reclaiming autonomy in a world where passions are continuously engineered. The modern puppeteers operate everywhere, in news feeds, advertising, political campaigns, and cultural trends. They leverage our deepest fears and desires, knowing reason will follow. History, psychology, and contemporary life converge to reveal a startling truth. Autonomy is fragile, reason is reactive, and the passions that move us can be both internal and externally designed. To act wisely in the 21st century, we must understand the subtle architecture of manipulation, see the invisible forces that guide our emotions, and reclaim the conscious role of reason in a world built to exploit our desires. Having explored the dominance of passion, the architecture of influence, and the subtle manipulation of our emotions, we arrive at a critical crossroads. Will we remain passive servants to our desires, or can we cultivate conscious self-mastery? David Hume's assertion that reason is the slave of the passions does not condemn us to helplessness. Instead, it illuminates the structure of our minds, revealing the terrain on which true autonomy might be pursued. Awareness is the first step. Understanding the patterns of emotional influence allows reason to operate deliberately, to negotiate with the passions rather than blindly follow them. Philosophers and psychologists throughout history have grappled with this tension. Nietzsche warned that the unexamined instincts, if left unchecked, would dominate, shaping morality, society, and personal destiny. Freud demonstrated that unconscious drives influence behavior in ways we scarcely perceive, often manifesting in rationalizations that hide the true motivating force. Modern behavioral psychology shows that habits, cognitive biases, and social pressures interact to reinforce the influence of emotion over action. Yet, each insight offers a pathway to partial liberation. By bringing passions into conscious awareness, we can align them with reason, creating a deliberate, reflective life. Consider ethical decision-making. In a world saturated with conflicting information and engineered desires, moral clarity is not born from reason alone. It emerges from conscious reflection on one's motivations, understanding which impulses are natural, which are socially imposed, and which are manipulated by unseen forces. Reason, when aligned with awareness, becomes an instrument of guidance, not just justification. It does not eliminate passion, it channels it. The individual who recognizes fear, desire, or envy as motivating forces can choose to act in ways that honor both intellect and instinct, creating coherence between inner drives and external actions. Political engagement illustrates the stakes of this dynamic. Citizens are bombarded with emotionally charged messaging, designed to trigger outrage, fear, or loyalty. Without awareness, reason is hijacked, becoming a tool to justify reactions predetermined by engineered passions. But when one understands the mechanics of influence, one can pause, evaluate, and decide consciously. Engagement transforms from reactive compliance into deliberate participation, guided by reflection rather than emotional contagion. In essence, conscious awareness allows reason to reclaim its role, not as tyrant over passion, but as a skilled navigator steering through the currents of desire and fear. On a personal level, recognizing the interplay of reason and passion transforms everyday choices, from relationships to career paths, from consumption to self-expression. Understanding the emotional currents that drive decisions allows for intentional living. We can identify which passions are authentic, which are socially conditioned, and which are externally manipulated. Reason becomes a compass rather than a servant blindly following impulse, enabling us to act in ways that reflect both self-awareness and ethical deliberation. The paradox is unavoidable. Reason can never be fully independent, yet its power lies in deliberate alignment with the passions. True freedom does not come from suppressing desire, nor from pretending emotion does not exist. It comes from understanding, embracing, and guiding it. The individual who masters this dynamic achieves a form of autonomy rarely acknowledged, the ability to act with awareness, to channel instinct into constructive action, to navigate life consciously amidst a world engineered to exploit emotion. History and contemporary life offer countless examples. Leaders who cultivate self-awareness can direct ambition toward visionary goals. Societies that recognize and regulate mass influence can mitigate collective manipulation. Individuals who understand their own emotional architecture can resist coercion, choose relationships consciously, and prioritize long-term values over short-term impulses. In every domain, the path to autonomy is paved with self-knowledge, reflection, and the deliberate alignment of reason with passion. Ultimately, the question is not whether passions will influence us. They inevitably will, but whether we allow them to dictate our choices unconsciously or harness them with conscious intent. This awareness transforms fear into vigilance, desire into purpose, and pride into responsible action. It allows us to see the invisible forces around us and within us, and to decide when to follow, when to resist, and when to redirect. The journey from passive servitude to conscious self-mastery is not easy, and it is not complete. We will always feel fear, longing, envy, and desire. Yet by observing these forces, naming them, and reflecting on their origin and influence, we gain a measure of freedom. Reason becomes a deliberate guide, not a mere post hoc justifier. In recognizing the dynamics of emotion, manipulation, and human behavior, we come closer to understanding ourselves, our societies, and the subtle structures that shape our lives. True liberation, then, is not the suppression of passion, nor the triumph of cold logic. It is the conscious reconciliation of reason and desire, the mindful alignment of action with awareness. It is the ability to navigate a world engineered to exploit emotion, making choices that reflect knowledge, self-awareness, and ethical intention. To live deliberately is to acknowledge the slave, guide the servant, and cultivate a mind capable of conscious engagement with the passions that define human existence. The ultimate question lingers. In a world where reason is always in service to passion, will you remain a passive witness to your own impulses, or will you confront them with awareness, reflect, and act consciously? The choice is yours. To understand the machinery of your own mind is to begin the journey toward true autonomy, ethical engagement, and self-mastery. Passion will persist, but now, reason can navigate its course.